The U.S. stocks sink after big tech earnings disappoint, and the hottest job market in a generation is over. Almost 4 in 10 Americans worry about paying bills, and numbers surpassing Great Recession era. So what does this mean, and how many people are going through this today? Let me read this to you. 40% American adults worry about paying their bills, with one resident, Angela Russell, noting the grocery store is just outrageous right now. Everything has gone up, clothing, my insurance. This concern suppresses levels seen during the 2008 Great Recession, where 37% were worried. We're talking about 16 years ago, Tom. Total household debt in U.S. reached a record $17.69 trillion, a 1.1% increase from the previous quarter. Moderating inflation doesn't mean prices are coming down. They just aren't going up as fast. More than a quarter of Americans have resorted to skipping meals due to high grocery costs, with 80% feeling a notable increase in prices. Many are spending 60% of their monthly income on essential expenses, indicating significant financial pressure despite the growing economy and low unemployment rates. Tom.
So there's two things going on here, and we have been talking about it, and we've been encouraging people, hey, look, you know what? A side hustle, living conservatively, that's kind of the tools you have to fight against this. But it is not surprising that now the surveys are coming out. Everybody was ignoring it when we were talking about it. The news would be out there. Wall Street Journal talked about it. Barron's talked about it, that there is 1.1 to 1.2 trillion in credit cards, meaning there's people have less space on their credit card to, buy something for an emergency, because they're adding to the credit card every month on groceries and things. Oh my gosh, if you're paying your power bill, your cable bill, and groceries on a credit card because you can't pay it at the end of the month, oh my gosh, no wonder that more than a quarter of Americans are saying, hey, we're going to skip a meal, we're not going to go out to dinner, whatever it is.
Cereal
for dinner, let's try that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, ramen noodles, just like we're all in college again. So number one, the Biden economy is just as bad as we've been saying it. The cumulative inflation of 30% is now showing up as people are screaming, and the higher rents, thanks to inflation, are causing people to get evicted. Right now, the middle class is in the middle of a freaking apocalypse, and the apocalypse is the Biden economy. And we're going to talk about it later today, but it really pisses me off that right now, with the presumptive Harris candidacy, they're talking about, oh, everybody talks about Harris as not being fair and everything. I'll tell you what I want to talk about is very fair. I want to talk about her economic record. I want to talk about what she did in California. I want to talk about what she has for Americans here, because people are hurting and they need frickin' help.
High rents cause evictions to spike by 35% in pandemic boom towns. Have you guys ever experienced being evicted?
It's humiliating. It's terrible.
It's one, humiliating, and not only humiliating. Imagine you're married. You have to go to your wife and say, can't afford to pay for it. Imagine you're going back to your family saying, hey man, I can't pay for it. Can I come back and move back with the family or friends or a couch? Now, people go through different financial difficulties, but these numbers here, just to kind of give you an idea. Eviction and pandemic boom towns have surged by 35% compared to pre-pandemic levels, driven by high rents as a result of pandemic-induced migration to the Sun Belt. Cities like Nashville, Fort Worth, Jacksonville have experienced evictions increases in 31%, 25%, and 14% respectively. The rent spikes were fueled by the influx of new residents during the pandemic, which outpaced the earning of local residents, according to Realtor.com. Rent increases peaked at 17% year over year in early 2022, particularly in Sunbelt cities. Although the rental market is still challenging for lower-income renters, recent trends show a decrease in rent prices in Sunbelt. Austin, Texas saw the largest drop at 6.6% in April, while Nashville and Jacksonville reported declines of 5.9% and 5.6%. Adam, thoughts on this?
Look, times are tough, man. The stimulus checks that went out during COVID, the money printing that went out during COVID, I think at one point it was 40% of all the money that was ever printed was done in 2020. Now I'm seeing data that it's as much as 80% has been printed since 2020. Whatever the number is, there's been a shocking amount of money printed. And what does that lead to? That's led to inflation. Now, if you want to basically put America in a bubble versus the rest of the world, America is performing wonderfully compared to the rest of the world. But we have high standards here. And it's not exactly comparing America to the rest of the world. It's comparing America to where are you better off now or are you better off 4 years ago? And as James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. There's a difference between the numbers and the data versus how people feel. And people just don't feel that America is trending in the right direction. And you can't tell them to feel a certain way. You actually have to show them. So here's what I could tell you about personally. I've never been richer. PBD, you've probably never been richer. Tom, Vinny, life's good if you're actually doing good things. It's the K-shaped economy. The rich are getting richer and the poor will always be poor. There's a difference between poor and broke. Poor is like I literally make no money. I have nothing going on. I'm just poor. I'm desolate. Life's not good. But broke is a different thing. Broke is you're working, you're hustling, you're trying, but you just can't get ahead. And I feel like the middle class is getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and they just can't figure out how to get ahead. That's why they say there's a difference between Wall Street and Main Street. If you're looking at Wall Street these days, the market's at all-time highs. It's been over 40,000. The S&P, I know NASDAQ took a hit. Bitcoin, everything that's going on there.
Right. So I'm just thinking of trends, PBD. So in 2001, the market, Adam, you mentioned, was at an all-time high. 2007, and then it all crashed, right? So now you said we're at an all-time high. That's a pattern that people should be looking at, right? The S&P keeps going up. Billionaires like Zuckerberg, Buffett, Bezos, they're selling their stocks. Politicians are selling more. 1 in 3 households that you guys said are struggling to live, to cover expenses. Credit cards, all-time high. Commercial real estate's collapsing. Small banks are going bankrupt. Record CEOs stepping down. How long do you guys think that this is going to last until another one of those like crashes is going to happen? Because we said it with this administration, it feels like they're just hanging on so it doesn't happen under this regime.
Right. So a couple things I want to give you guys feedback, because sometimes when you hear some of these stories, like I remember one time, I'm at a meeting, and at this meeting, the guy says, can you go on a 60-day diet from the news? 60-day diet from the news. Can you go on a 60-day diet from the news and radio? I said, okay, I'll try it out. That's the last time I ever listened to the radio. I've never listened to the radio since 03, right? Can you go on a 60-day diet from listening to all the scary stuff that's going on and just kind of listening to some people that may be reasonable and they're talking across the board and it's optimistic about the future looking bright versus, oh my God, it's the end of the world coming here. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, see what happens to you. I had a friend of mine, a relative of mine, I told her, I said, listen, for whatever reason, you watch and follow every single one of the conspiracy theories that are out there. You follow all of them. Can I tell you something? What? You look miserable. Says, what do you mean? I said, I'm being serious with you. You look miserable. You look so unhappy. But what if it's true? And what if it's true? And what if it's this? And what if it's that? And what if it's that? I said, okay, no problem. Follow the news, stay paranoid, but be optimistic. But there is a balance of being so caught up in what's going on that you're just not a good husband. You're not a good friend. You're not a good brother. You're not a good wife. You're not a good employee. You're not a good leader. You are like so on the edge because it's like everybody's coming after you, right? It's tough to be around someone like that. If you're watching this, and yesterday one of the ladies said such a powerful thing. One of the main ladies, I won't say her name, she manages $1 trillion of Goldman Sachs's money. I mean, she's the brass, heavy. I asked her, I said, let me ask you a question. When families are creating wealth, what mistake do they make? And it was so interesting listening to what she said. Tom, I don't know if you remember her comments. She said, here's what happens. So sometimes when you first come to money, people will sit there and they'll say, yeah, I want to go growth and I want to put my money in the stock market and I'm good with this money being in growth for the next 20, 30 years. And you do, and then a massive crisis takes place. Then they choose to take their money out of the stock market because they're afraid. Then John turns around and says, during the pandemic, when the Dow went down to 18,000 from 36, whatever the number was, 2 of my clients took all their money out. Like, let me explain to you what happened during that time. You pretty much could have gone from $100 million to $50 million in a span of 90 days on paper. But if you go from 100 to $50 million and you all of a sudden said, man, this is going to get worse, you take your 50 out. You know what happened 90 days later? It went back to $100 million.
Right, but you just locked in your losses.
You just lost $50 million for panicking. So, in this time, folks, no matter what you do, if you're part of a community that doesn't find a way to change yourself and improve yourself, and you get too caught up in blaming the economy, blaming Kamala, blaming Biden, blaming Trump, blaming everybody, the same thing's going to happen when the economy is good and the economy, that's a cyclical cycle. Do not fall for that trap at all. I'll read this next story to you and watch what this story is going to do to you feeling-wise. Just see how you react to this next story. You ready? Here we go. Let's go through this together. Majority of people now say it's impossible to achieve the American dream. Again, the headline, how do you feel right now? I agree. If you said, I agree, you just gave up and they win, right? Listen, majority believe American dream is unattainable. A Newsweek poll reveals that 54% of Americans think it's increasingly difficult to achieve middle-class status. Among millennials, 57% find the middle class unachievable, followed by 59% of Gen Xers, 48% of Gen Zs, and 51% of baby boomers. This perception is reinforced by who? not an expert, by a TikTok user who said, I cannot afford to live anywhere alone despite earning 3 times the federal minimum wage. Changing economic realities, the middle class in the U.S. have been shrinking, with Pew Research noticing a decline from 61% of households in 1971 to 51% in 2023. And Vivian, a former Wall Street employee known as Your Rich BFF on TikTok, highlighted that the traditional American dream is outdated, stating, we cannot use the same playbook our parents gave us to live life today. The shifts toward lower paying service jobs and automation has exacerbated this trend. Tom, your thoughts? I got a lot of thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours first.
Whenever I see American Dream, I always say to people, what do you mean by that? The word doesn't mean what you think it means, inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
Right. So when I say American Dream, I say, what do you mean? What does that mean to you? What are you trying to achieve? Because if you automatically paint a wall in front of yourself and say, well, that's American Dream, I can never get over the wall, that's a negative thinking. So the question is, what does that mean for you? What do you mean American Dream? What did you just talk about? Positive forward planning and optimism. Yep. You know what? I want to look forward and see, maybe I find a 3-bedroom place to put myself in a preparation zone for being married and having a kid. That is a positive forward thought. But in the American Dream, well, I can't do the American Dream. Maybe it's, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do what my parents did, have 2 kids before they were 30 years old, me being one of them, right? And bought a house in the suburbs. Well, maybe you're not going to be able to do that. Why? The suburbs are different. The cities are different. They're being rebuilt. Housing is in a different place. So when I hear this, I say, what do you mean, what is the American Dream? It's the American Dream for you. So how do you improve yourself? How do you optimistically prepare forward? And yes, there are things like inflation that if you sit there like a frog boiled in a pot, you look around and go, oh my gosh, I can't afford this. That's very true. And you should proactively evaluate the leaders you vote for and vote for the people you think are going to make it better. Meanwhile, back to you, where do you go? So when I look at the American Dream, it's what are people defining as the American Dream? If it's living like your great grandparents did, coming home from World War II, doing this, and this, or living like your parents did in the 70s, live in the suburbs and do this, and this. No, it's going to be different. It's a different generation. It's a different time in America. I think you have to positively set up what is your own dream and what is your vision for your career and how to find side hustles and do things that put yourself in a better position. That's what I think about it. And the American Dream, I think a lot of times is an election year ploy to get people to think negative. Oh, you'll never be able to do what my grandparents did.
I'll tell you, the old American Dream is dead, straight up. But when one door closes, another door opens. The new American Dream is as alive and as vibrant as ever. It just depends on what your definition of the American Dream is. Back in the day, in the 80s, there used to be a phrase, he who dies with the most toys wins.
It was a consumption mindset. People see what you've got.
Exactly. So you needed to have the house, you needed to have the cars, you needed the picket fence, you needed the 2.2 kids, you needed to have the dog, everything. You worked at the same company for 40 years. There was no turnover. Everything was the quote unquote American dream. Well, that's changed. Especially for young people. The cost of living, the math don't math anymore. So everyone has the same big 3 expenses. I've said this before, housing, transportation, and food and beverage. If you just do what everyone has always done and just have your house, have your mortgage, have your car, have your car payment, go out, eat once a week, buy lunch, food and beverage, the math doesn't add up. You will be broke. So you have to do something differently. The whole name of these games today is having financial freedom. That's all it is. Whether you want to move, whether you want to work remote, whether you want to take a job elsewhere, whether you want to get married, whether you want to have kids, that's up to you. And then that's the money side of things. I'm saying American Dream has changed and you need to define what the American Dream is to you. Don't let that define what you think it should be.
The reason they call it the American Dream is because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Yeah. And by the way, and I've listened to all of those jokes and I've listened to all of these shots that I can't do this and poor me and all this other stuff. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of my kids when kids talk like that. Adults shouldn't talk like that. My kids talk like that. You know what the sentence starts off with? What's the 3 words? It's the 3 words that kids use. It's not fair. It's not fair. A grown man shouldn't use those words because what you're doing is you're giving the other person power. What you're indirectly saying is, I'm helpless. You're not. So for me, a part of this is, I'll give you the true side that this is factual, but it's mathematical that it's true. And then the other side is that you're choosing to accept it. One of the biggest fights I ever had with my dad is, he'll remember this. My dad and I were sitting and we're talking about marriage. And he had married my mother twice and he had divorced my mother twice. Let me say that one more time. I told the story yesterday in New York. They're like, I've never heard that before. I say, yeah, my mother and my father got married, boom, 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 boom. So it's really, yeah. I said, so he would say, let me tell you, marriage is this, and marriage is that, and woman this, and woman. I'm like, listen, do you want grandkids? Of course I want grandkids. The way you're talking to me, you will never get grandkids from me. What are you talking about? Dude, you got 3 other siblings. You got 2 brothers, and you got a sister. Guess what? What? None of them gave me a cousin. They all live past their 60s. How come I don't have a cousin? Guys, I got 4 uncles and aunties. I got 1 cousin. How the hell is that possible? Did you guys hear what I just said? I got 3 uncles and I got 1 auntie. My mom's got a brother. Had 1 kid. He's the only one that had a kid. I said, do you want me to give you grandkids or no? Then stop saying this kind of stuff. I don't want to hear this language. This language is constantly like you're discouraging me from wanting to take the risk of having a family. Do you know how hard marriage is? Oh my God, it's hard. You never hear me talk about how easy marriage is. When have you ever heard me say marriage is easy? It's not easy. Being a parent, is it easy? No. Oh my God, it's tough. 10 out of 10 times I do it all over again. With the hard, with the challenge, and with the sleepless nights, with all of it. It's not supposed to be easy. But I'm not going to, oh my God, feel sorry for me because I'm married and I got kids and all this other stuff. That's the language of a child. And adults, we don't speak that way. By the way, all of us have. Do you know why we speak that way? Do you know why we speak that way? It's not fair. Why does the other guy get a promotion, not me? It's not fair. What do you mean? We all do it. Don't fall for that trap. Maybe tone it down a little bit. When I hear professional people speak, do you know how everybody speaks when I was at Goldman? Yeah, so on this floor, what we have is this. And let me share with you why we decided to put this thing on the 12th floor, on the 11th floor. On the 41st floor, we have this. And it's like, well, what do you think? Well, because, when you think about it, here's what's going on. And you're hearing these meetings, and you're hearing, how long have you been with the company? 41 years. How long have you been with the company? 25 years. The goal is to be here for this many years because this, that. What kind of money does that person make? Well, she makes around 5 to 7 million. She makes 5 to 7 million, yes. Good for her. What is she doing? What is he doing? What is David Solomon's salary? $31 million. Go Google it. What kind of money he's got? What do you think the stock of Goldman's worth? What do you think these guys are doing? They probably brought down the level of emotionalness and they increased the score of reasonable, making better decisions, and ended up succeeding in their lives. You don't have to sit there and agree with them politically. They made good choices. So I'm going to wrap it up here for you guys to be thinking about this part. Do you know, since I got out of the Army, 21 years old, very interesting stat most people don't know about. Every year, since 21 years old, every year, I've gone to 4 business conferences every year. Since 21 years old, 4 business conferences every year. Tony Robbins, Tom Hopkins, every year, 4 business conferences every year. What did that do to me? You know what's the thing about every business conference you go to? What's going to be 30 to 50% of messaging? Stop making excuses. You can recreate yourself. Go read some business books. You can find a way to get better. You can choose to lead. And you're kind of like, dude, but you don't understand. My parents got through 2 divorces. Stop making excuses. I hate you. No problem. You're still going to go back to your life. Is it going to be good for you to keep hating me? Do something about your life. He's right. See, that's the thing that people have to choose. Recreate yourself. Step number 1, it's 10 keys. Number 2, identify your cause. What's the cause you want to plant your flag? What is your cause? I identify my cause. Boom. Last one. Go make history. And law number 25, make a bold move. What's a bold move? I'm going to move to such and such. I'm going to stop doing this. You going to stop doing that? I am. There's no way you could do that. Watch me. I went 17 months without sex at 24 years old. My friends are like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, don't invite me to clubs. I'm done. There's no way you can pull it off. You'll never pull it off. I did all the distractions, late night calls, arguments with girls and all this, calling Maria another name. It's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I thought I was talking to my cousin. No, you're not talking to your cousin. You know how many times you screw up mistakes like that? You know how annoying that is? Get on the phone for 30 minutes while you're at work trying to explain to her why you messed up her name. You can't use autocorrect. Back in the days, Nextel didn't have autocorrect. You really called me Maria. I'm sorry. Or you say, no, it's my cousin Maria. Introduce me to your cousin Maria. You don't have a Maria cousin. Now you have a problem. You're dealing with this. Here's all I'm saying to you. Get the stats, compound interest. If you invest $100,000 between 0, 6, 12%, here's the most basic thing I show that you look at this and you're like, oh, shit, that does kind of make sense. This is how life works, folks, okay? What you'll notice is after the first 12 years, you don't see a sudden change. It's the same amount of money. Look at that right there. If you invest, what is it, $1,000 investment? At year 10, what difference do you notice between 2%, 4%, 6%, 7%,
Nothing.
8%, 9%? Zero. What do you notice at year 20? What do you notice at year 30? You're not even in the same league.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not even in the same league. Here's why, folks. The reason for it is if I'm obsessed with improving myself and reading books at a pace of 36 a year, you read 2 books a year and you're consuming a bunch of bullshit content all year long, then I'm reading good books, you're reading romance novels, I'm around people that have big plans. You're not around people that have big plans. You're around gamblers and alcoholics and party guys and chasing skirts. You could be way ahead of me at 22 years old, and you got the fanciest degree from USC, and I got nothing. We're not in the same world by 32. By 42, we don't even know the same people. It's game over. It's a very different thing. If you think long term, the reason why the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer is because of compound interest. They're making 12% on their money. You're making 1%. You can never compete with them. And the gap is going to get wider. The same with people that read and improve themselves. So don't fall for this trap of feel sorry for me. That's why I'm not winning. It's Biden's fault. It's Kamala's fault. It's all this stuff. Vote accordingly. Vote better. But at the same time, put the onus on you. Don't put the onus on somebody else, because that means you're